Gracious and loving God, so overrule my words, that your words may be heard, and being heard may be believed, and being believed may be lived. Amen. So tell me, have you ever been invisible? You chuckle. But I'm talking about that situation where you are physically present somewhere, but nobody seems to notice. Have you ever felt like saying, hey, look, pay attention to me. Don't you see me? My guess is some of you may know what I'm talking about, but others don't know at all. And that's the point. Both the passage from Proverbs, our passage from James, and the story of the Syrophoenician woman in Mark are about invisible people, or maybe people we don't want to see or we choose not to see. The problem with invisible people is nothing new. Our gospel passage from Mark is a great example of someone who should have been and would have been invisible, but chooses to forcefully make themselves visible in this rather dramatic story. In the story of the Syrophoenician woman, Jesus is not in Jewish territory. Rather, he is in a predominantly Gentile population. He's in a house where he did not want to be noticed. We are not told why. Yet this woman has the audacity to start a conversation with Jesus. Now, a woman like that would never speak first in that culture to a man who was not a relative. She is an outsider in many ways and violates the customs of the time by speaking to Jesus as a Jew. She is, however, someone Jesus would not have had contact with according to Jewish law. She would have been invisible to Jesus' world. But here the one who is normally invisible becomes visible. The one we would like to ignore gets in our face and says, listen to me. I am a child of God too. You must pay attention. A story that illustrates the problem of invisibility for our time. Because it was a significant story early in my time as a priest. Dates back to my time at Church of the Holy Spirit on Cape Cod, where I was a curate. We were one of several churches which did what was called overnights of hospitality. One night a month, we would host homeless men from all over the Cape. We gave each pair, they would go to a different church each night. We provided them food. We were fortunate that when they built their parish hall, they had the wisdom to put showers in the basement restrooms, so the men could get a shower, which is a really great gift to someone who's homeless. And they had a warm place to sleep and food. One of the gifts of that ministry was it allowed the invisible to be visible. And I had a chance on several occasions to spend time with the men while I was the assistant there. One year, the Tuesday, and we always did Tuesdays, happened to be Shrove Tuesday, the night before Ash Wednesday. So guess what we had? A pancake supper done by the EYC. Of course, there are some universals all across the church, and that's one of them. Well, the EYC later came to me and said, Mark, what are we going to do about the homeless men? I mean, do we feed them ahead of every time and put them in the basement, or we just feed them in the basement? Well, the look on my face told him, oops, wrong question. And I said, why would we do that? They need to be fed, and we are having a dinner that is open to the entire community. They will eat with us. And they did. And our youth encountered them. Someone that was normally invisible to those young people. You see, the answer was automatic because early in the year I'd sat down at dinner with one of the men and heard his story. He had a job, but because of the extremely high cost of living, especially in the summer on Cape Cod, he could not afford a place to live. He asked me, do you know how hard it is to be invisible? I sit on a bench in the evenings, sometimes in Hyannisport, with all my belongings beside me, and people walk by. Not only do they walk by, but they seem to look right through me. They don't see me. It's like I don't exist. after our dinner that night, he came up and he shook my hand and said, "Thank you. It was wonderful to talk with you tonight. Thank you for seeing me." What a profound comment. And I almost wept. Our Norfolk Homeless Ministry is about seeing people that spend most of their time being invisible, and that's a display about that as part of our outreach display in our ministry fair. This is a little community, and it's a community by anybody's definition that pops up several times a week off of East Princess Anne Road in Norfolk by the Cedar Grove Cemetery, in a place simply known among the men and women there as the Wall. Some come and help prepare the food at Sacred Heart Church early in the morning, but most are waiting when we arrive. And we arrive, and other cars arrive from other churches, and tables go up, and food is served, and trunks open, and clothes are distributed, and shoes given out. Our young people, especially Kathy's kids, or grandkids, come out with bags, and they hand out the hand sanitizer and hand lotion and the plastic bags that they use to put the sandwiches in that we make on the third Sunday of the month and other churches make. And they come away with food not just for that morning, but for the whole day, and maybe some of them into the next. And as I hand out the food, I now seem to be the designated server for either oatmeal or grits. By the way, if I have the grits, I'm really busy because we make about twice as much of that, because that's what those guys and ladies and children, by the way, want. And I hand that styrofoam bowl, or that, actually we're now using paper, and I hand it to them, carefully making sure, and I consciously make an effort to touch their hand and to look them in the eye and wish them a blessed day, or ask them how they are. And most of the time when I say, "How are you?" "Just great!" How many of you would expect that out of someone who's homeless on the street? But that's the usual response I get. I am acknowledging each and every one of them as being visible and being a child of God. Then as quickly as it appears, the people scatter, we clean up, and by 8 o'clock, you'd never know there was anybody there. It all happens in about an hour. So I again ask you, is there a time when you find yourself invisible, or you find yourself treating someone as invisible? As I was preparing for the start of our program here and going over the website in preparation for Ministry Fair, looking at our outreach page, updating it, and one of the things that was still on there was the manna bags, which we'd done for several years, but we stopped doing that for some reason. And I find myself once again encountering those men and women at the stoplights on 264 in Rosemont, or at Little Neck, or outside of Trader Joe's on Hilltop, and feeling that guilty feel of, I want to give them something. And so I'm wondering, it's time we restart that ministry so that all of us will have those bags, and we can do that again. We can do that. So I'll toss that out there if somebody's willing to take that ministry under their wing and resume it. It's a way to say to that person on the side of the road, "I see you." There's an African phrase, Ubuntu, that says, "Because I see you, you exist, and I see you and you exist," is the basic idea behind it. It says you exist and you matter, and I acknowledge that. This is also a way we can tend to both the readings from Proverbs, which talks about how do we greet the rich and the poor, and the message of James, which reminds us that those who share their bread with the poor are blessed. This is also the continuation of the message of James that we had from this week, where the ultimate law of love your neighbor as yourself is held up for all of us to follow. Now, Jerry Stoll sent me a C.S. Lewis quote on Saturday, not knowing that I was writing this sermon this way. And it was perfect. It's from a lecture, a sermon he gave in Oxford in 1942. And he states it this way: "There are no ordinary people. You've never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, art, civilization, they are mortal. and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Next to the blessed sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. Let that sink in. Next to the blessed sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. Lewis clearly teaches that everyone is our neighbor. We are reminded that not only in this teaching of James, but it comes from the Hebrew Scriptures as well as in Leviticus. It's part of the Torah and is quoted by Jesus as one of the great commandments. So I ask you to consider, who is the invisible person or people in your life? Who needs you to see them? Whom does God want you to see, to take notice of, to care for? I am sure there is a Syrophoenician woman in each one of our lives. Today's message is to think about who that is and how you can see them, really see them, as a beloved child of God, of the beloved child of God that we all are, and then go, as James says, and act in response of your faith. Amen.
Amen.